By now you must have known that Adhiban has made a comeback. He has won a game on demand against Vidit Gujrathi with the white pieces, and he has forced the tiebreaks. And this tiebreak is going to happen on International Chess Day, which is going to be a great treat to all chess lovers. Now let's focus on this game where Adhiban started with c4. Now this is an opening move that came as a surprise to me. I was expecting Adhiban to go e4, but c4 was a surprise. And after c4, c5, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, e3. Vidit chose e5, and after d4, e takes d4, e takes d4, Vidit played d5. Now there is some tension in the center. If white takes the pawn on d5, the knight will come to d5. So here Adhiban decides to develop his piece with bishop g5, and here Vidit responds with c takes d4. Here knight into d5 was threatened, so he took c takes d4, and then knight takes d5 happened. And in this position, according to my database, Vidit played a new move. He played bishop to e6, and the predecessor was a game that was played on chess.com. Bishop e7 had happened earlier, but here Vidit played bishop e6, and this is the first time I actually saw this position. Like, I saw the game live, and I was considering different options for white, and I felt that maybe Adhiban has managed to get the kind of position that he was aiming for, because he could simply play bishop d3, and if his opponent takes bishop takes d5, then you can take cd5, and if queen d5, there is castles. And I think that this is a kind of position that Adhiban wanted to keep the king in the center, have some initiative. But in this case, after bishop d3, bishop into d5, cd5, black also has this check, bishop b4. So maybe this is the reason for not playing this line. After bishop e6, he played queen to b3. Now the point of this move is that he's attacking b7, supporting the d5 knight. But in this case, black has a forcing continuation that wins a pawn. So he played bishop takes d5, and after c takes d5, he gives a check, and the king has to move, because if you play a move like knight d2, it will be very passive. Queen will just come and take the pawn on d5, and if you go bishop d2 again, there's no point of having your bishop here. Black will just take this and then pick up the pawn on d5. So here Adhiban bravely went with king d1, and then after queen takes d5, he played bishop to c4. Now, needless to say that the bishop is also keeping an eye on f7 pawn, so he went queen d7. And now in this position, the computer likes bishop into f6, which seems normal, but Adhiban went with bishop b5. Now he's actually threatening to play bishop into c6, followed by queen into b4. So he makes use of some consistent threats, to keep the game going. In this position, Vidit has a very nice idea to completely take the initiative. It involves moving the knight to d5. For a move, black is delaying the castling, but the point is after knight d5, if white plays a3, then the bishop comes to e7, and then if you take bishop into e7, there is a knight de7, and everything is protected. And you can see white has 5 pawns, but black has 6 pawns, and it's pretty safe position, and it's a great position to be in, especially when you have won the first game. But in this game, after bishop c4, queen d7, bishop b5, Vidit played queen to d6. Now this is, let's say, the second best move in the position, but already he had lost his chance to dominate in the game. After queen d6, Adhiban chose a3. He wants to push this bishop away. If black pushes bishop to c5, that vacates the square on e1, so the rook can join the action with rook e1. So this is what Adhiban was intending to do. If the king goes to f8, then more action follows after bishop into c6, followed by knight e5. You see, again the f7 mating threat is there, and if you play something like queen e7, white can also play knight d6, but he'll first probably play rook c1 and keep an eye on c5. And yeah, he has great chances. So after a3, bishop a5 is the only move. Black's bishop has to control the check on e1, and then Adhiban went for bishop to f6, and g takes f6 happened. In case of queen takes f6 in this position, white can play bishop into c6, and then if you take queen takes bishop, he has knight e5, and then again the bishop on a5 is hanging, and that's the reason this position is dangerous. So now black has to support the bishop and the pawn on f7. he has to support the pawn on f7 because that is close to the king, and then with queen b5 check, white picks up the piece. So after bishop into c6, b into c6 would have been forced, and then queen a4 would have at least ensured equality to white, and I think there's a lot of game left. But after bishop into f6, Vidit chose g takes f6, which is okay. And then after queen a4, now the threat is bishop into c6 followed by queen takes bishop. You see, in such a high pressure game, Vidit is now having a situation in which he has to deal with threats move after move, and it is not so easy to play accurate moves consistently. And after queen a4, he played bishop b6, he's still keeping the balance. And after rook c1, he played rook c8. Because the c6 was attacked, he protected it. And this is the moment in which Adhiban decided to walk with his king to b1. He played king c2, and then after castles, he played king b1. So now the battle zones are set. Black's king is on the king side, and white's king is on the queen side. And if you see and compare the king's position, I would say that white's king is safer than the black's king because of this G line, because you see the pawn has come to f6, so there's some weakness already. Based on that, I think Vidit was feeling some pressure. In this position after king b1, he played knight to e5. This is a good idea because he's ahead in material, so it's a good idea to exchange pieces. After knight takes e5, fe5, Adhiban simply put his bishop to d3. Now Adhiban is banking on the fact that his bishop on d3 is capable of creating mating threats on the king side. Whereas the same cannot be said about the black's bishop, because these pawns are like obstructing the bishop in a way, and if black manages to push the pawn, then black is winning. So based on that idea, Vidit actually tried f5 later, but that proved to be slightly dangerous for his king, and then that was the turning point. We'll come to that. After bishop d3, I think a move like king h8, rook g8 would have been interesting, or simply waiting and doing nothing. Just waiting with queen e6 and keeping the pawns on their original squares just the way they are would have been an interesting way to continue. But here Vidit played rook c1, and he chose f5. Now if you look at the computer's recommendation, yes, computer also likes f5, but I don't know if it's practically so easy to play with f5, because that's exposing the king to a certain degree. But yes, f5 is, according to computer, it is the best move. And after f5, Adhiban played f3, preventing e4, and then after king h8, he played queen b5. Now if you observe Adhiban's approach, he's not really taking any committal decisions. He is slowly moving his pieces and provoking his opponent to move. And these e5, f5, I think they are slightly loose now. After queen b5, queen e7, he goes queen d5, taking advantage of the drawback of opponent's move. The queen was protecting the square here, but with queen e7, queen comes to d5. Instead, I think a6 could have been interesting. And then after a6, let's say if the queen goes to a4, maybe something like queen e6, just waiting. This is, I think, a good approach in this kind of position. But after queen b5, he went for queen e7. He wanted to get e4. And Adhiban stops e4 with queen d5. And then after rook d8, he comes back with the queen to b3. And in this position, black can keep playing with queen f6 and support this pawn, but he played e4. Now after e4, the pawns are jammed. After fe4, rook e1, this pawn cannot be protected, so it has to move forward. And then after e3, he played rook f1. Now the threat is rook f7, and h7 is a target. So in that connection, after rook f1, Vidit played king g7 to prevent rook f7, and then queen d1 happened. Now the queen wants to go to g4 or h5, and the h7 pawn is feeling the pain. And so in this moment, Vidit decided to give up the pawn with e2, and after bishop into e2, he played rook f8 and decided to exchange the rooks so that the pressure is neutralized. And of course, when you are ahead in material or when you are playing for an initiative, exchanges should be avoided. So he played rook h1, and then after king h8, bishop d3, bishop a5, queen a4, bishop b6. Adhiban now brings his rook to c file, and then after queen e3 simply protects the bishop with rook d1, and after queen e6 he plays queen b4. Now if you again observe the moves of Adhiban, he is enjoying his position, playing the moves slowly, and now after capturing the central pawn, I think white has a clear plan. The plan here is that there is one weakness here on h7, and white has to create a second weakness, or let's say a second target. That could be the king in itself. So these two pawns can together help white in creating mating nets. And if it's possible, I think white can also create something on the queen side. But for that to happen, the pieces have to be exchanged. Like, you can't expose your king with heavy pieces. So Adhiban waits for his turn and then slowly improves the position of his pieces. So he plays rook f1, and then after queen b5, of course he avoids the exchange of queens because white has the initiative. White has to keep the queens on board. In positions like this, when there is opposite color bishop, it feels as if one side is actually a piece up. So this is something that I read somewhere, and it's true here. It feels like this white bishop has no enemy. So there's no opposition. The bishop is enjoying free hand. And after queen e7, queen b5, bishop c5, queen b3, rook f8. Here, I think this is a critical moment. Here Vidit decides to play rook f8 because again rook f7 is coming. And if, let's say king g7 happens, Adhiban was intending to go bishop c4. And then this queen is coming to g3. And let's say if you play rook f8, there is queen g3 check, and then there is rook e1. Or also rook takes f8, queen takes f8, queen e5, queen g7, queen e8, or just take the bishop. Yeah. So these were deadly threats already in the air, and this is a kind of nagging pressure that white has. So here Vidit decides to play rook f8 to give up the pawn. A few moments back I mentioned how that winning one of these pawns can help white in creating something on the queen side as well. And here you see after queen takes b7, that also comes into picture. And after queen e7, queen c8, queen f5, with the help of these two pawns, Adhiban can hope to create a mating threat on the king side. And then he's also playing with the idea that the queens can be exchanged, because the pawns here are, let's say white will create a pass pawn on the queen side and one on the king side. The pawns are sufficiently separated. So this is something that we have already covered on our channel before, that if the pawns are separated by more than 3 files, it's a easy winning margin, because the king, the defending side, cannot defend both the sides. They can focus only on one side. So in this position, after king h8, he goes g4 and then goes g5, and then after queen c8, queen h3, he wins the pawn on h7. Basically he traded the pawn, and then now we have a passer here, and then after a few moves, king d7, I think this is a winning position, because these two pawns will merge into becoming one, like there'll be a passer. So here again same happens, there is a trade, and then this is just an example. Of course Vidit resigned much earlier, so he resigned in this position. So I'm just giving you an example. After king g8, the winning move could be this, the winning plan could be this way. Here after king b7, just a7 and it's over. Even if, let's say, this bishop and pawn are getting exchanged, white will simply bring the king here, push the pawn, and win the game. So that was a very interesting game between Adhiban and Vidit, and of course I'm sure that this was the one moment that Vidit will really look up, and he'll look at this point and say that this was probably his chance, where he had this knight d5, I think. Or let me get that. Yeah, I think bishop b5, knight d5. I think this is a moment, or is another one. Let me get that. Yeah, knight d5, a3, and then bishop e7. Yeah, so I think this was a good moment, but yeah, after the queen d6 and then this king walk to b1, after that it was not so easy, and then probably Vidit had to employ the waiting strategy, but that did not work out in the game, and Adhiban managed to win. So we will be seeing an exciting tiebreak tomorrow, and I am personally very excited about which openings they will employ. My guess, I will not really reveal my guess here because I also want you to figure out things on your own. So if you look at the games and if you look at game one, Vidit tried d4 and Adhiban tried King's Indian. And my guess, I will not go into specifics, but I can say that they may not repeat the same line. That's my hunch. Do leave your opening preferences in the comments. What openings do you think Adhiban and Vidit will play in the tiebreak tomorrow? We'll be watching the game live, and I'm wishing you a happy International Chess Day in advance. We have a lot of things planned tomorrow, and you can also check out the article where there are different things mentioned. What you can do on World Chess Day. You could maybe teach the game to someone. You could play some bullet games. There's also going to be a 24-hour marathon. So do participate. All the best, and I'll be back with another video soon. Until then, take care. Bye bye.